Okay, let's get started. Good morning. My name is Lou D'Andrea. I'm an interface developer at Wolfram Research, and today I'm going to talk to you about building contextual interfaces. If you were at John Foltz's State of the Front End talk earlier today, you've seen some of what I'm going to show. I'm going to talk about contextual interfaces that you have seen already in our product for some number of years. In fact, for the last decade or so, I think 8 years, we've been showing various kinds of attached interfaces. So I'm going to survey some of them here. We have the ability to overlay an interface for showing you completions for when you're typing code. We have an overlay, an attached interface. Whenever you click on a bitmap image in the front end, you automatically get image editing tools. Notice how these tools are overlaying the notebook content. A lot of this technology was developed initially for the predictive interface, the suggestions bar. So here we have an attached interface. And here we have an attached interface. Notice that this interface goes away, comes back exactly like the image editor goes away and comes back exactly when you need it. And some other attached interfaces that maybe you didn't realize were using the same technology. So control equal has an assumptions button, and that assumptions feature throws up an interface in a place that looks sort of like a tooltip, but is interactive. In our message support, we've recently added the ability to show stack traces, and the stack trace is shown as part of as one of these contextual interfaces with the ability to make it into a real notebook. And lots of others. A mesh editor, there's a lot of image editors. I'm not going to itemize every single one. We've got some new ones coming in 12.2. In particular, Noah Hardwick is giving a talk immediately following this talk on the Canvas feature that Stephen has demoed and John Foltz has demoed. And Noah's going to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the issues surrounding that. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that talk. But this is the state of attached interfaces. So one of the things that we want to do is wrap this up in a nice little box with a bow to give users the ability to build these interfaces themselves. So what did we want to do with the thing that we give users? Well, we wanted the ability to attach anything, any display, any cell to any object in the front end, be it a box, a cell bracket, a piece of a notebook, etc. We wanted those attached cells to not dirty the notebook. We didn't want them to get into cell expressions or notebook expressions, not be saved with the notebook, etc. We wanted to make sure that we could use the full richness of the Wolfram language control language, so input fields, sliders, all manner of dynamics, graphics, etc. We wanted the ability to obscure other notebook content, so the attached cell wouldn't have to worry about fighting with user content for being able to be seen. And we wanted the styling to sort of be automatic, but obviously you can do all kinds of things with styles. And we wanted them to be chainable, so you can have an attached interface that can attach things to itself. What are some of the results of these design goals? Well, since they're not part of the notebook model, they're not saved with the notebook, that means they're not going to travel with copy and paste either. This is a good thing. We don't want interfaces propagating unnecessarily. Because they're drawn on top of notebook content, that means that they're going to catch mouse clicks. That means even invisible attached cells or the invisible corners of attached cells are going to obscure things. And if you have multiple attached cells that want to be attached at the same point, you might get a little bit of chaos as the transparency shows multiple attachments. So something to keep in mind. Also, the attached cells render in the space of the notebook window. So if the attached cell wants to be wider than the notebook window, you're not going to see the piece that spills off the side. And just sort of the usual kinds of concerns. If you have an attached cell being spawned from a dynamic module box, you're going to need to learn about wormholes, or if you know about wormholes, you're going to have to extend that knowledge to attached cells. So what is the thing we built? So in 12.2, those of you that have the conference beta or some pre-release build in the last, I don't know, a few weeks, will have access to this. By the way, this notebook that I'm presenting from is already on the conference site. Feel free to download it and use it if you have a new enough build of 12.2, or save it for when 12.2 comes out so that you can refresh your memory as to what this talk was about. So simplest form, we want to attach an expression. So here we're attaching an expression. Where does it attach? Well, by convention, it's going to attach to the cell that evaluated. So I evaluate this, it attaches this hello world within the sort of spatial region of the cell that it's attaching to. And the attached cell function call returns a handle to that attached cell. And this can be used in lots of different ways, and I'll show some of those ways a little bit later. Let's grind through the syntax. So that's the one argument form. Two argument form lets you specify what you want to attach to. So you can attach to a notebook object, a cell object, or a box object. If you don't know what these things are, I'll talk about those in depth in just a minute. So here we have, I'm going to show an example of attaching not to the cell it's evaluating and not to the cell before it, but to the cell before that cell. So the heading cell, I'm going to attach something. And the reason I chose that cell is that that cell has a font color. And notice that the attached cell inherited that font color. So the attached cell is going to inherit some bits of the styling of the cell it's attached to. You can think of the styling of an attached cell the same way you would think of the styling of an inline cell. Those are the kinds of inheritance that we're talking about. So you can optionally specify a location in the object to which to attach. So we can say attach to that heading cell, but instead of doing the default location, attach at the right edge of this cell. So if I evaluate this, it's going to show the attachment happens at the right edge of that cell. And you can specify any of the sort of important points around the perimeter, center top, left bottom, et cetera. And we'll take a look at some other positions, some special positions later on. So you can also specify a location in the thing you're attaching. So those of you familiar with Inset, you'll be familiar with the pause, pause notation. So the position in the object should align with this position in the thing you're attaching. So here I have a simple academic example of a box for which I have a box object, and I'll show this a little bit later. So we have a reference to this box, and I want to attach a red square to that box object. So the upper right corner of the object here should align with the upper right corner of the box I'm attaching. And so here we have the ability to do that kind of alignment. I'm going to attach a green box now at the same point in the object, but I'm going to attach it at its left bottom corner. So we evaluate that, and we see that the green box is attached at its left bottom corner. Notice that it's overlaying other notebook content. And a blue box, I'm going to use the distance specification to say attach at the left bottom corner of the blue box, but at a distance of 100 points from the right top of the gray box. And here the blue one is another stair step away. So I've included in this notebook a manipulate for you to investigate different pause, pause positions. That is for you to play with once you have 12.2, take a look at this notebook and see what you think. So the last thing I'll mention is the syntax related to deleting attached cells. So we have the ability to delete attached cells manually. Here is a simple, if annoying, attached cell attached to the notebook. Return to cell object. One way to delete an attached cell is to call notebook delete on that object. So here we call notebook delete, and that annoying attached cell goes away. But we have an option, removal condition, plural, removal conditions, that lets you specify a list of conditions that will cause this attached cell to automatically delete. So we can delete automatically whenever the kernel quits, for instance, or whenever the mouse leaves. This example uses the mouse click outside feature. So we don't need to specify another interface element that the user interacts with in order to close this. We can just have them click anywhere and the attached cell goes away. So very useful. This is all documented. I don't know if the documentation for it made its way into the conference beta, but it certainly will be in the final build of 12.2. So let's walk through the attachment points. Cell object, box object, notebook object. You might be familiar already with cell objects. We developed those when we were developing the predictive interface. The cell object is a reference to a particular cell in the front end. We have ways of extracting lists of them or individual cell objects. Those of you unfamiliar with these can use this as a jumping off point to learn about cell objects. But as far as attached cell and how it interacts with cell objects, well, the first thing to notice is that the attached cell returns the object. So here I have a button. We're attaching to this evaluation cell, and this button is going to delete the object corresponding to the attached cell. So it's a button in the attached cell that deletes the attached cell. You click that, and the button and the cell it contains disappear. The thing I want to point out is you don't need to remember this box object, the cell object from within the attached cell display. You can instead use evaluation cell as a reference inside of the attached cell. Evaluation cell refers to the attached cell. So here we're attaching to the cell I'm shift entering a button which deletes the evaluation cell of that button, which is the attached cell. So this again deletes the attached cell. And of course, you could walk up the cell object chain to the parent cell of the attached cell. In this case, that's the cell that I just evaluated. So here we have an attached cell that when clicked is going to delete the cell, this top level in17 cell. So it can very definitely affect notebook content. So those are some of the ways that cell objects interact with these guys. I wanted to point out the couple of special attachment points that we've developed for cells. So the inline attachment point is immediately following a cell expression, and it pushes other things out of the way. So here we're attaching to this cell some panel that has a manipulate and a button, and we're attaching it at the position inline, which is immediately following, and notice that it pushed this other item out of the way. I'll show that again. We evaluate this, push the other item out of the way. This is not, so this is the kind of cell attachment point that we use for the predictive interface. You'll probably be familiar with that. And another useful handle is the cell bracket. So even when the cell bracket is hidden temporarily or permanently, we know where the cell bracket would have been. And here's an attached cell that displays essentially a progress indicator or progress monitor to the bottom of the cell bracket. So as something is running, here we have an indication not in the notebook content area, but attached to the cell bracket that something is happening. So that's useful to be able to know where the cell bracket is. We'll talk a little bit about that in the future directions slide at the end. But for now, let's move on to a different attachment point. So box object. Box objects are a little bit more slippery and a little bit of a newer concept than cell objects. But the analogous definition should be clear. It's anytime you have a reference to a box, you know about the box language in the Wolfram front end. And we have a box object is just a reference to a particular rendered box. There's currently one and only one way to get into this world, to the box object world. And that is by using evaluation box. Which is a documented construct, and I'd encourage you to go look at the documentation if you want to become more familiar with it. But essentially, anytime you have an evaluation box, the evaluation box open close evaluated from inside of a box. So in a rendered dynamic, in a button function, in an event handler function, etc. It's going to return the box object for the box that spawned that evaluation. It will not return the box object if you just try shift enter on an evaluation box. That's a meaningless concept. This is not evaluating from a box, it's evaluating through the kernel main loop. The boxes are long gone by the time this is evaluating. So evaluation box is useful, in the context of boxes. And one way out of the evaluation box straitjacket is you can walk up the chain of boxes using parent box. So you can look at the parent of an evaluation box and its parent and so on. But we're not going to be doing that here. We're going to be looking straight at evaluation boxes. Here, a button which does nothing but print the evaluation box reference when you clicked. So one nice thing about the typeset form of box objects, by the way, is that this number is actually a button which, when clicked, will select the box that it refers to. So here we have a box object that refers to the button box. And here we have, if we do the same thing in event handler, we have a box object that refers to the boxes for that event handler, and so on. There's a couple of other ways to do these. But let me show by example some of these. So we have, first I'm going to show an example of using button. So we have an attached cell that we're attaching to the box of a slider. So we're taking along the right edge of the button, we're going to attach the left edge of a slider. And we have evaluate this, we click on the button, and we get a slider. It's not attached to anything, but it could be. And we're going to click it away. So that's the simplest possible evaluation box example. Here's another example that I think is kind of nice, which automatically, it uses the second argument of dynamic. So it specifies a mouse down, mouse dragged, and mouse up events separately. And on mouse down, this is going to attach a cell to the slider. And then while dragging, it's going to change the value of A. And on mouse up, it's going to automatically remove the attached cell. So here we have a new way to have a labeled slider by just using attached cell as part of the dynamic tracking mechanism. I think that's kind of nice. So I'd like to show a couple other examples of attaching to box objects. This is a wormhole example. I mentioned wormholes earlier. You can look up wormhole in our documentation, but you can also look up inherit scope, which is the real option name of the thing that you're going to want to use when developing wormholes. Here we have a dynamic list plot, and next to that list plot is a button. And what that button does is it spawns an attached cell connected to the button that gives an interface for editing the data. So in this case, I click on edit data, and it spawns this interface that looks like a grid of input fields. This is a table view. It's a construct that we're actively working on, and we've improved quite a bit for 12.2. So, and I can go in here and I can edit the values, and the eagle-eyed among you can see this point moving in the graph as I edit this thing. So this is an interface that's actually attached to live data. Those of you interested in table view, Jason Abernathy is going to be giving a talk about that at noon today, Central Daylight Time. So I'd encourage you to go check out Jason's talk to learn more about table view. And Brett Champion provided an example a couple of years ago and reminded me of this example a couple days ago, where that it's important to drive home, I think, that one can have click events even inside of graphics. So here we have a bunch of spheres, and each sphere is a button that spawns an attached cell. And in this case, what does that attached cell do? Well, it attaches to the button box, or I guess buttons in graphics, that's going to be a tag box, a display that indicates a call out information. So we evaluate this guy, and now this is a 3D graphic, but we can click on the spheres, and it's going to attach a call out that gives us, this is sphere number 2, this is sphere number 4, this is sphere number 6. So just driving home the point that buttons and boxes can be just about anywhere in the front end. Okay, so let's look at attaching to notebook objects. Why I'm trusting that the majority of people here understand that what notebook objects are. So I'm going to focus instead on why you might want to attach to notebook objects. One common thing that we have done, I think, in our cloud open save framework, occasionally we will put informational banners at the top or bottom of a notebook. And that's done with attached cells. So here I'm going to attach just a simple banner to the upper right corner of this cell, so, giving some small indication, sorry, the upper right corner of the notebook, giving some indication of something. This is just a silly little academic example, but you can imagine how this might be useful. And again, I have it automatically disappearing on mouse click, but it could be persistent. It could have its own little close box in there that does notebook delete of attached cell. Sorry, notebook delete of evaluation cell. But for convenience, I've set things up that way. You can also have an attached cell that takes over the whole of the notebook display area. So here I have an example in an evaluation notebook that is going to show something at the same size as the whole window, and attach the center of that to the center of the window and evaluate this. And so this content that I've hidden with an iconize is displaying a dynamic progress indication saying, okay, I'm doing something, you need to wait. And it's not really doing anything all that interesting, but then when it's done, it automatically discards the attached cell. So if you want to take control away from the user, you can do that with an attached cell like that. Or if you want to make sure you get the user's attention, here's another example, which again, I've hidden the details behind iconize. You can always un-iconize to see the details. But so this is an interface that again obscures most of the notebook and asks the user to focus on a particular thing that you're communicating. I think in web lingo, this is known as a lightbox. So so here we have the ability to again make sure that the user sees some important piece of information. Right. Okay. So we've talked about cell objects, box objects, notebook objects. We've talked about some of the ways to trigger attachments. We can trigger attached cells. We can trigger them by any evaluation, obviously, that can run the attached cell function. That's going to be coming in 12.2. Other places that function can be run, button clicks, mouse activity, dynamic updates. One I wanted to especially point out was initialization, because initialization has been an option to dynamic module and other interface constructs for some time. But starting more recently, initialization is an option to also now an option to notebook and to cell. So if one wanted a piece of code run automatically, say whenever a notebook is displayed or whenever a cell is displayed, one can now do that with the initialization option to notebook or to cell. So here I'm going to give an example that takes a notebook expression. So example data can return notebook expressions. This returns a notebook expression that has a few text cells in it corresponding to Lincoln's address. I'm going to add an initialization option to it, which does attach something to that notebook. And again, you can see the details by uniconizing, but I will evaluate this so you can see what it does. So it renders what you can think of, I guess, as a watermark over this notebook. It attaches. Notice that the watermark moves as the notebook is resized, and it overlays the content in a way that you might want for a watermark. So, very powerful, this initialization concept. You can also set it, it's fairly common to set it in style sheets. So if you have a cell that you always want a particular style of cell to render a particular attached cell on it, you can include an initialization setting in the style sheet definition for that style, and it'll happen automatically. So that's triggering attachments. I also want to talk a little bit more about triggering detachments. We've seen a couple of examples already. You can manually call notebook delete. We have this option for removal conditions that lets you specify automatically getting rid of the attached cell. We've also mentioned, I haven't proven this to you, but we've mentioned that these guys are automatically stripped when saving the notebook or when you're copying and pasting the content. We also have the attached cells are automatically removed when their immediate parent is deleted. So I wanted to show an example of that. And in so doing, also show an example of nested attached cells. So here we start with the same gray box that we had earlier. And we use the initialization option of dynamic to get the box object for that dynamic box. So here we have a box object corresponding to the dynamic box that contains this gray guy. Now we're going to attach to that gray box a red square to the right of that box. And we have a reference to that red square. So this red square is an attached cell. and its cell object is stored in the variable red. We're going to attach to that cell object a green square. So to the right of the red square will be a green square. We have now two attached cells. Red is attached to gray, green is attached to red, and likewise we have, we'll add a third here, blue is attached to green, and green is attached to red, red is attached to gray. What happens if we get rid of the green attached cell? Well, the green one itself will disappear, but also any attached cells attached to it, or attached to attached cells attached to it, will also be deleted. So if we delete the green guy, then green and blue both go away. If we were to delete red, I guess one thing I will show you is the copy and paste. So if I have an attached cell, now I just copy that and pasted it, and now we have we notice that the attached cell has disappeared. Okay. Well, that brings me close to the end. I wanted to point out that, there's lots of, we're planning to do lots of other nice things with attached cells going forward. We're going to be thinking about ways to add features in the user space, including renaming things and attaching common operations in plain sight. We'll be building out features for attaching content. So we've already seen that Lightbox-like example. We might be packaging that up as its own feature, so you don't need to roll it yourself. I also wanted to point out that for certain idiomatic attached content, we probably will be providing convenience functions for that as well. So we have, we have these ribbons that we show in the image editor or for the predictive interface. Wouldn't it be nice if there were some user level way for you all to be able to create these guys yourself? This is pseudocode. It's not in 12.2, but just included for a possible, future direction of a way that we might provide the ability to build ribbons to users. We're also going to think about more ways to use box objects and to get box objects into more widespread use. And the point of building attached cell in the first place is that now you guys can take this and run with it. So that concludes my talk. If there are questions, I have a couple of minutes. I think I can make an attempt at answering them. Otherwise, thank you for your attention.
Lou, looks like there was a question earlier in the Pathable chat, which was, will attached cells work in the Wolfram cloud?
Yes, so good question. Not all of these features work in the cloud. The cloud has built out, you've seen the predictive interface working in the cloud. So attached cells to some degree work. Not all of the features of the attached cell syntax will work in cloud on day one, but we will be pushing that to completion in the fullness of time.
It looks like there was another question that says, as I understand it, you can attach more than one cell to a place, making a tree. What about attachment loops?
What about attachment loops? I don't know how you'd close the loop. You can't, so in other words, you can attach an expression to an object. You can't attach an object to an object. So the attached cell function always creates a new leaf, if you like, and then attaches it to a previously existing node. But there's no way to close that circle.
Looks like another question there is, can we have drag and drop functionality in notebooks, for example, dragging an object from a library and dropping onto a canvas to build a graphics?
Well, certain number of drag and drop things work already. Those of you who've tried dragging PNGs into notebook windows or CSV files know that import is called automatically when dragging things into a notebook window. Specifically, dragging things and dropping them onto a canvas is not something I know how to handle at the moment, but I'm happy to discuss in the office hour this afternoon if that's important to people. I'm happy to get feedback about what's important, and we can talk about what might be possible in the future.
Another question was asked. I am wondering if we can see the attached cell objects if we do a notebook get on the evaluation notebook.
So notebook get, notebook read, notebook save, none of those things will get you the attached cell. The attached cell is not part of the notebook model at all. It's just not present. And so nothing that looks at the notebook expression is going to show you the attached cell. There may be some way to navigate objects to get to the attached cell, although I don't think there are currently. But there's nothing in the notebook expression that will expose the attached cell, any attached cell.
Another question from the Pathable chat says, can we attach cells to a docked cell?
Interesting question. So yes, you can, but the problem with that is that docked cells are very limited in their space. And so you can't have an attached cell currently, you can't have an attached cell that spills out of the, attached to something in the docked cell area that spills out of the docked cell area. So in that case, what we're considering is being able to attach something at a position in the notebook. So referring to an element of the docked cell, not as an object in the docked cell, but as an object in the space of the notebook window itself. And then that attached cell could spill over, it could ignore the boundary between the docked cell area and the notebook content area and use the full notebook window area as its drawing space. We don't yet have a solution for that in 12.2, but that's the thinking that's the direction of thinking that we're going.
Looks like there's a follow-up question of below and also about a slidable sidebar.
I'm going to need more context to understand that question. Maybe I should switch over to my refresh.
You may need to refresh that page. It looks like a little out of date.
Below, and
there was another question while we're waiting for more context that says, if we print or print to PDF, will the attached cell show up?
Interesting question. I think the answer is no, but I'm not sure. Good thing to try. I think. So yeah, I don't know. And I don't know what I would expect there either. So is the question, so about below, can we attach cells to a dock cell below the attached cell? Maybe that's the question. And I think I've answered that in my description of the limited space available to the dock cells. Slidable sidebar. I mean, one could certainly imagine attaching something to the right or left side of a notebook window that gave the impression of being a drawer or something like that. But it's not, it would still have to be in the direction of the notebook window. It can't sort of slide out in the other direction to give more space out of the notebook window. Yeah.
If anyone also wants to ask a question verbally, they can use the raise hand button in their Zoom and we can give you the ability to speak. Looking at the time, we have about 5 more minutes before the session ends automatically. So if there are any questions, now would be the time. Okay.
I'll remind people while we're waiting for hands to go up that this notebook is on the conference site for this page. So I encourage you to grab it. And if for no other reason than to remember what we talked about. And so when 12.2 finally goes out and you see attached cell in all of its glory, you can play with these examples, especially the manipulate example, which maybe I'll just play with since people don't have other questions. That's here.
There was one other question in the Pathable chat that says, is it how workflow pages are done?
Is that how workflow pages are done? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, part of the beauty of building these technologies is that they start being used by people other than us, other than the user interface group, to do things that we didn't officially sanction, and that's great. But it means that I don't have firsthand knowledge of all of the things that people are doing with these things. The attached cell, the front end support for attached cell has been in the product for years, so it's entirely possible that some enterprising user has learned enough to be able to do some very interesting things with attached cell that could be refactored in light of this new and forthcoming kernel function. But I wouldn't necessarily know about that. Okay, well, I'll be around for the rest of the conference if you want to direct message me, or I think I'm also part of an office hour this afternoon. So I look forward to interacting with y'all then. Thanks for your attention.